Hello and welcome. My name is Zafar Iqbal, and you are watching The Mojo Story. You saw those videos that came out from Canada where Khalistani separatists, Khalistani extremists went on a rampage at a Hindu temple in Brampton. They beat up the worshippers and also tried to disrupt the entire uh, proceedings that were taking place there. And then there was police action. Ironically, some of the policemen in those videos you can see on that screen were actually seen pushing the worshippers rather than targeting, rather than putting away the Khalistani separatists who had come with holding flags in their hands, and they were shouting slogans, anti India slogans. But in one of the videos, there was one person who's actually belongs to the police force in Canada. His name, Harinder Sohi. He was one of them. And then that's really caused a lot of tension. People are really asking the question that what was this policeman doing out there, and is it fair that he was on the side of those people who were disruptors and Khalistani separatists? What sort of a message it sends across? To discuss this, we are joined from Canada by a person who has been in the police force, Donald Best. He's an ex-Toronto police sergeant and the sole recipient of 2018 Ontario Civil Liberties Award. Welcome to the show, Donald Best. When you saw those videos, of course, we read your tweet. You had some questions to ask to the police, and they, in fact, gave you some answers. Can you explain what exactly happened?
Yes, well, we had that. It started off as a protest at the Hindu temple in Brampton, but make no mistake, there is a law in Canada in Criminal Code, Section 176.2. Everyone who willfully disturbs or interrupts an assembly of persons for religious worship or moral or social purpose, they're committing a criminal offense. So out to protest outside of a temple or a Catholic church or a Buddhist or a Sikh place of worship,
Yeah.
if you protest outside of that and interrupt it, you're committing a criminal offense.
Yeah.
Now, then we saw many people recognize that one of the Khalistani, one of the people who was associated with that and holding a sign and a flag, a Khalistani flag, was a serving Peel Regional police officer, not just a police officer, but a sergeant. And he's very high profile in the community. How he thought that he could get away with this, I don't know. Perhaps it was just a sense of entitlement. But for him to appear even in a peaceful protest outside a house of worship is a criminal offense. It interrupts the worship service. Right. So he should have known, but he chose to do this. And then, of course, it turned into a mob scene and people were assaulted. And I have seen some of the videos, and to me, it looks like the Khalistani protesters entered onto the land of the temple. So, when that happens, there's no doubt. Okay. So this is the situation. And I tried to alert the Peel Regional Police to it at about midnight on Sunday night. And they got back to me and said that they couldn't talk to me right now. Right. And then I sent them the questions. Was this man an actual serving police officer? Yeah. When they finally, I published my article about 1 a.m. Monday morning. And when they got back to me about 11 a.m., they admitted that he was a police officer and that he had been suspended. So there's an internal investigation. And then I found some other photos and movies of him at an October protest in downtown Toronto in front of the Indian consulate. And he's holding a sign demanding that all uh, consulates and everything of India across Canada be shut down. Well,
It sounds unbelievable. The question is that had those videos not leaked or surfaced, do you think no action would have been taken? It is the action was taken. His suspension happened only after he was pointed out in those videos where people saw him and they sort of indicated to the higher ups that this person is probably a policeman. And then only perhaps the wheels of justice started moving. And we don't know whether it will stop at suspension or perhaps the investigations will move on. But is there a possibility that he can once again hold on to that job, or that's over for him?
well, never say never. Everything's political. Unfortunately, even the hiring and firing of police officers in Canada has turned political. Not about the law, not about the rule of law. It's not even about Peel's principles of policing, which I'm sure you're familiar with,
Yeah.
but being Commonwealth country. But it has turned into a political game of football. So what we have here is a very high profile in the Indian community police officer who admittedly for 18 years appears to have done good work or some good work, but now he has violated the criminal code. He has thrown himself in with these Khalistani separatists, and you know what? Canada's a free country, and as citizens, we can talk politics. Even at one time, back in 1987, I was a sergeant with the police service, and I ran for office to be a member of our provincial legislature. So, and our current Minister of Defense and previous Minister of Defense and Public Safety, they've been chiefs of police of Toronto. So the fact that a police officer does engage in some political activity, as long as it's within certain bounds, well, we allow that in our society. However, he committed a criminal offense. He's thrown himself in with, frankly, a group that has terrorists in it.
Right.
We know this, okay? We know this. Air India bombing and everything like this
Yeah.
in Canada, and we know
Yeah.
this. So he's done this. In my opinion, and I've arrested police officers. I've charged them. I've arrested judges and crown counsels. That used to be my job, rooting out corrupt authorities. I don't see how the community can ever trust him again. How can he fulfill his duties impartially as a police officer? What Hindu in Brampton now, and there's so many people from India in Peel region, all kinds of different people from India. But who can trust him now?
Yeah.
Many Sikhs don't go with the whole Khalistani independence movement.
Right.
I mean, I think you know that, and I know that. Who
Yeah.
can trust this man again? He must resign or be fired, in my opinion.
Right.
Not to
And
mention
nobody will
the breach of the criminal code.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody will trust him, but it's also obvious that it has dented the reputation of the police force on the whole. How can this happen that one person who is a serving police officer and goes around and sides with a bunch of protesters who are breaking the law?
I have serious questions about when the Peel police knew he was involved in this. And let me tell you why. On October 18th or so, he was part of a protest, a high-profile protest, Khalistan protest, waving a flag in downtown Toronto. That protest was heavily covered by the press, but also by the police, and you can bet the intelligence agencies provincially and nationally in Canada. Absolutely, because of the connection to terrorists, okay?
Right.
You can't tell me for a minute that they didn't know this officer was involved, at least in October. They must have known. I can take his photo from that protest
Yeah.
and do a search on Google, and it comes back with his police photo in uniform.
Right.
Okay? So come on.
Yeah.
They already knew. But because an independent journalist,
Yeah.
myself and some others, made an issue of it, then they had to act. And we say that when the sunlight hits them, the cockroaches scurry, you know, the insects scurry. So you have to shine a light on this kind of corruption. And when it happens, people must react. And so they've done that.
But also, it indicates on a broader level that these Khalistani elements, Khalistani extremists, seem to have infiltrated the system at different levels. See, he is definitely a Khalistani supporter. At the same time, he's a member of the police force. And he has so much confidence that he can do this and get away with this. Only points to the fact that Khalistanis are everywhere in the system. And that is why they got so emboldened.
I think there's some truth to that. And a lot of it's political. But don't forget, organized crime and powerful groups have always tried to infiltrate the police, government, the courts. They always do it. So the police, when I was with the police, I arrested police officers for working with organized crime, for working with Italian mafia, with the Chinese mafia, the Vietnamese gangs. I arrested police officers for taking bribes from each one of those gangs, and still to this day, we just had another case where a motorcycle gang penetrated the police force, and one of their women became in charge of criminal records. If you can imagine that on our provincial police force, so this happens. My point is, you must be vigilant. You can't just hire someone and then think for 20 years they're going to be okay. No, you must be vigilant. Now, back to your point
Yeah.
about the Khalistanis infiltrating throughout the system.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay. And it has happened and don't forget, I recognize that some Sikhs are not Khalistani supporters and some are, and I recognize that. But it seems to be that the Sikhs and even some Khalistani supporters are overrepresented in our institutions.
Right.
Now, we're a small country. We have 40 million people.
Yeah.
But you must remember, we have had mass immigration from this current government, this
Right.
liberal government. We've had
Yeah.
mass immigration, so much so that 5% of our population arrived within the last year and a half. What? I mean, that it's impacting housing, it's impacting the social mood, it's impacting employment because believe it or not, our liberal government subsidizes employers to bring over foreign workers, many from India, and fire Canadians.
Right.
How insane is that? But it is to do with politics, and they're getting in people who quite simply will vote for them. It's all political. Now, your external affairs minister, I read just this morning where he had commented, he had slammed the Trudeau government for issuing visas to people with links to organized crime.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And many people from India and other countries too, but India is a big country, so we get a lot of people, right?
Right.
Right. So many of the people coming here to Canada will claim refugee status
Yeah.
simply because they are in trouble in India. They are criminals. They are members of
Right.
organized crime. And your
Right.
foreign affairs minister, your external affairs minister, recognized this. I agreed with everything that he said, frankly.
And all of this is happening under the watch of Justin Trudeau. Remember, last year he stood up in the parliament and he said, agents of the government of India are responsible for the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. India says that he was a Khalistani separatist. Now, all these people take out rallies. They glorify the killers of a former Indian prime minister. all of this is done in the garb of free speech. When they know that they can get away with this under the Justin Trudeau's watch, do you think that is the case here? Otherwise, they would not have done this.
I think that I do think that they are emboldened. Now, as far as the claim that the Indian government had something to do with the murder of a person on Canadian soil, I don't know much about that. I haven't studied the evidence.
Yeah.
It would seem to be very serious if
Mm.
the police and our federal government said that
Mm.
out loud. I mean, that's a terrible thing to say unless they seem to have evidence. So, is it possible? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But that's separate from what I'm talking about right now,
Right.
which is our government seems to have given the Khalistani separatists and terrorists a free rein. And as I say, we think we like to have free speech here,
Right.
but many others in Canada are not given that same free rein.
Right.
In February of 2022, we had several thousand truckers, normal, good Canadian citizens, who went
Yeah.
to Ottawa to protest that we didn't want to have these injections mandated and that it was against the Constitution, where they were preventing us from traveling from province to province. And the police brutalized those citizens. They declared the Emergencies Act. They seized their bank account with no judge's order, no way of appealing it, no due process. I mean, it was just tyranny. Well, that was for them.
Right.
But it seems the Khalistani separatists can do whatever they want. They can even put parades and floats celebrating people who were involved in murder and acts of terror in India. And they do. We've had enough, frankly. Ordinary Canadians of every background. Look, Canada, we have so many people. For 100 years, people have been coming from India. My next door neighbor, when I grew up, my best friend Paul was from India. And all around in Japan and China, everything. We all try and get along here. And even if you're from countries that are at war back home, when you get to Canada, we try and leave that all behind.
Yeah.
Somehow, that's not happening with the Khalistani separatist movement, with the Sikhs, and now, unfortunately, with the Hindus. There was an incident last night where a group of Hindus or people supporting the Indian government smashed up some cars in Brampton, and
Right.
they were going to march someplace, and Canadians are just saying, please, can we have our country back?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to ask you.
Yeah.
Aren't people in Canada tired of all of this? Because it is giving a bad name to Canada internationally. It's always in headlines for all the wrong reasons. Shouldn't people say that it's enough? Let's get out of all of this.
Well, we'd like to, and of course, we have some 14 Chinese spies in our parliament. 14 members of parliament are apparently Chinese spies. 4 of them have been revealed now. And, we just wonder what has happened to this country
Yeah.
since the current government took over. And there you go.
In fact,
I
one
mean,
of them, I
w-
was reading the report of one of those Chinese spies was actually in the forefront of being critical of India, saying that Indian interference is taking place in Canada. But then reports suggested that he is himself some sort of a spy of China in Canada.
well, all I know is about 10 years ago, I thought Canadians and Indians got along great. I thought Canada and India got along great. Didn't you? Didn't we
Yes,
do okay together?
yes, yes.
What happened in 10 years? What happened? Well, I think what happened was this federal government pandering to different groups, different tribes, different religions, different political, and especially now to the Khalistani separatists. So, what's going to happen with this police officer? I think he should be fired.
Yeah.
And not because he's involved in politics or a protest, but because of the exact people that he's involved in that have terrorist connections. Plus, he broke the law. He committed a criminal offense. Now,
Right.
whether he was involved in the actual attack, I don't know. People are looking at those videos right now, and I think we've got about 20 videos people have sent me. So we'll see. But in my mind, he can no longer be a police officer anywhere in Canada. The trust is broken.
Absolutely. But you were saying that there's politics. There's this legislator, Jagmeet Singh, whose support is very crucial for Trudeau. And of
Mhm.
course, that is one reason that, we're seeing such incidents taking place almost on a daily basis. There is a definite political connection to all of this.
Now, I've been told that Mr. Singh is not allowed into India. Is that true? I've been told
Yes.
that. Yes. So that's really something to say that one of our national political leaders is not allowed into another country because of his terrorist connections, and that's terrible. That's embarrassing. I mean, look at what we're seeing there now.
Yeah. Yeah.
We saw many of the Sikh and Khalistanis ripping up Indian flags, and they
Yeah.
use their knives to do it. They use their
Right.
knives and their swords to do it. Now, Canada has a very strange law.
Yeah.
Canadians are not allowed to arm themselves. We're not allowed to carry any defensive weapons, not pepper spray, not a knife, not a gun, not a baseball bat, not a little club, nothing. Canadians are not allowed. However, if you're a Sikh, whether you're a citizen, a new resident, or you're just visiting from India, you're allowed to carry knives and swords
Right.
because it's part of your religion. So
Right.
the only people in Canada, other than official, law enforcement, the only people in Canada allowed to carry defensive weapons are Sikhs. There you go. It seems very strange.
Yes. But Donald, I was just wondering, is there a distinction between Sikhs and Khalistanis in Canada? The fact is that in India, there's hardly any Khalistani sentiment existing today. Whatever we see is there in Canada. But do people recognize that there is a difference between the Sikh community and Khalistani? It's a small bunch of people. They have an extremist ideology and they want to break India. Is that, does the sense exist in Canada?
Well, ordinary Canadians really haven't paid much attention. They really haven't to the whole Khalistan movement and Sikhs. We haven't really paid attention, but we've been forced to lately, and this is what's happening. Now, it could be that everybody who gets in trouble or is part of the Khalistan separatist movement in India, that many of the people who are part of that, whether they support it politically or whether they do acts of wrongdoing, that they come to Canada because it has become a haven. It has become a haven for these people. So thus, and they enclave. Instead of spreading all across Canada, they go into their own communities. So then they elect their own member of parliament or their own
Yeah.
government people, and they become
Yeah.
very powerful. So
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that
Yeah.
the Khalistani movement has undue influence throughout
Yeah.
Canada. There's so
Yeah.
few of them, so few Sikhs, relatively in Canada, and yet they have such influence in positions of authority and power. How
Right.
did that happen? Well, I think the federal government and Jagmeet Singh propping
Mm.
up the federal government together, they are a political movement and they rely upon Sikh separatists a lot for support.
And, and as we are speaking, my producer is putting this up that there's a tweet of Jagmeet Singh which says that places of worship must be protected, de escalation and calm must be prioritized. I am deeply disappointed to hear about the violence that targeted Sri Guru Singh Sabha Maltan Gurdwara. All those responsible for yesterday's violence, including inciting it, must be held accountable. Which violence is he talking about?
Well, uh, we might call that crocodile tears from Mr. Singh.
Right.
Mr. Singh has been on the forefront, I believe, of protecting the people in this movement. And I know that he has spoken at, I believe, I can't remember the exact name, the Canadian Sikh Youth Movement or something like this, which has
Right.
ties to Khalistani separatists. So
Yeah.
there we go. So yes, okay, it's all fine for Mr. Singh to say what he wants to say, and I suppose he has to say it, and he said it.
Yeah.
But what he empowers in this country says that he's on the other side.
Right. And when the relations have reached to this point that diplomats have been expelled, Canada has bracketed India like an enemy country with Iran and North Korea. This is the situation. Where do we go from here? Is there any scope of recovery? Day by day, we're seeing things going from bad to worse.
Well, I'm I'm not sure that you can say that all Canadian citizens view India as an enemy. I
Right,
certainly don't. And
right,
as far as government operations and intelligence operations and even wrongdoing, I think every government in the world has their share of illegal and bad activities. That's just a that's just a
right,
reality. Okay.
right.
If the government of India committed
Yeah,
crimes, assisted in committing crimes, murders of people on Canadian soil, then those individuals should be held accountable.
right.
That takes evidence, real evidence. I've dealt with
Yeah,
evidence all my life.
yeah,
Unless you've got the goods, all you've got is rumor and political pushback. Do they have the
yeah,
evidence? Well, I haven't paid enough attention to it,
yeah,
but perhaps they should make that evidence public
right.
if they
And
have it.
also, stories were leaked to Washington Post by senior officials. There's been much of back and forth on this issue. India has been asking, please give us any evidence. The Prime Minister of Canada says that made that statement on the basis of intelligence inputs. Things don't seem to be going towards a track of normalization between the two countries, of course, between the two governments. This is high time that things can be resolved and put in a direction towards normalcy.
Well, it's all about political control right now, I believe, for the federal government. And the federal government, the Liberals, have fallen out of disfavor with most of Canadians. And certainly, I don't think that Mr. Singh will be elected again. But they're hanging on until October of 2025 because they have to get their pensions.
Yeah,
If they call the election now, they don't get their pensions, especially
yeah,
Mr. Singh. He needs to go
yeah,
until October. And that's
yeah,
true of a few of them. Um,
yeah,
I think that there will be a new prime minister. I think it will probably be the conservative leader, Mr. Polyev. I really don't know what he thinks about all this and India and such, but I think the thing I want people from India to remember is that for generations, Canadians and Indians have gotten along just fine together.
right.
And whatever has happened, well, let's hope we can normalize things again.
Yes. In fact, we've been getting reactions from Prime Minister Modi, who has tweeted about this last night uh, after this incident at the Brampton temple. If we can get that tweet up on the screen. And also, Foreign Minister Jai Shankar spoke about this. So things seem to be, these things are being taken very seriously in India. What's happening? I can tell you, as a journalist, we're daily reporting this story. There is daily a new development. On one day, we hear that the Indian Home Minister has been named as the person who is giving orders for fomenting trouble in Canada. On the next day, we hear that there is some sort of a violence at a temple. So every day there is a new story, and that story is not a positive story. All stories seem to be negative stories.
Well, Canadians, and this is very sad, but it's true.
Yeah.
that Canadians have had just about enough of foreign conflicts on our soil. I think the
Right.
mood of the country is we don't care who's right and wrong anymore. Will it please just stop? Can we have our peaceful country back?
Right.
And I'm also including the Palestinian protests or the anti-Israel
Right.
protests. I'm
Yeah.
including the Ukraine and all of this. We have people sleeping on the streets in Canada. We have
Yeah.
a big drug problem, and by the way, you probably know one of the
Yeah.
largest drug busts in history
Yeah.
just happened, and they were all Punjabis in British Columbia.
Yeah.
And many of them were over on visas. We don't
Yeah.
scrutinize anybody. This is the political lack of will and lack of control, lack of protection for Canada that this government is exhibiting.
Right.
So we have all these homegrown problems. The economy's not well. Housing's going through the roof. People are losing their jobs. We have had, as I say, we've had millions upon millions of temporary foreign workers enter Canada in the last few years. They're subsidized. They're taking the jobs. Everything is just going downhill. Unfortunately, that is starting to start an anti-immigrant feeling in the country,
Right. Right.
right? And so that's why I say people are tired. You
Right.
want to fight? Go back home to India and fight.
Right.
Seriously. And these are just good, decent people we're talking about, but we've had enough
Yeah.
in Canada. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
I can tell you that in India, in Punjab, in India, there's no Khalistani sentiment at all. There's elections that are conducted after every 5 years. Khalistan is not an issue at all as of now, right today. But we can use that soundbite of S. Jaishankar, India's foreign minister, specifically talking about Canada today. Okay, there's some problem with that soundbite. It is just buffering. Okay, it's not playing. Okay, it just buffered, it didn't play. For some reason, there must have been an internet problem. But coming back to the issue of this policeman who has now been suspended, there is actually a spokesperson of the police. They put out a statement which says that we are aware of a video circulating on social media which shows an off-duty Peel police officer involved in a demonstration. This officer has since been suspended in accordance with the Community Safety and Policing Act. We are investigating the circumstances in totality depicted in the video and are unable to provide further information until such time that the investigation is complete. Now, the question is that he was off duty. But even when you are off duty and you see a situation is developing, as a person who is there for the defense to execute law and
If I
order,
could.
what should be the role? What should have been the role of this policeman, even if he
Minister
was
Joyce
off duty
Community, I
and he
would
saw
say
all of this
that that's
happening?
West's position in relation to three comments.
I'm
We've
hearing
all the
something else.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah,
Okay, so the position of the police officer, any police officer, is this: you swear an oath, you have a
Yeah.
duty to obey the law, to enforce the law, to protect people and property. There are various things in your oath. Okay, police officers, in very many ways, are never off duty.
right,
Although he was not working, you are still a police officer 24 hours a day. You have all the authority and the duties that a police officer does, which is why it's so serious when a police officer breaks the law, as this man was breaking the law. Now, I expect if they're going to do a good job investigating him, they should go back and see for the last 10 years what records he has accessed.
right,
Who did he investigate? We have police computer systems that are capable of pumping out every inquiry that he ever made. And if he's making inquiries about people that he's not doing an investigation on, there's no reason. We have many police officers who have been fired and even gone to jail for revealing confidential information to various people. We even had a police officer who revealed a certain address to his son, and then the son went out and committed a murder. So,
Right.
I would expect that they will do a thorough background check, because if this man is associated with Khalistani separatism and their associations with terrorists, in what way has he abused his position and authority in the past 15 years? I want to know.
And I'm sure that will all be a part of the investigation. But before we wrap up, I have been told that we can play that soundbite of S. Jaishankar, India's foreign minister, now. Oh, we don't have the audio of it now.
Without providing specifics.
Second is the rule of law and the independence of the judiciary, and also, frankly, the sovereignty of all countries.
Let me make 3 comments. One, Canada has developed a pattern of making allegations without providing specifics. Secondly, when we look at Canada, for us, the fact that they're putting our diplomats under surveillance is something which is unacceptable. Third, the incidents which the gentleman there spoke about, and do look at the video. I think they would tell you, in a way, the political space today, which is being given to extremist forces there. So we believe in freedoms. We also believe freedom should not be misused. And have you had a talk about it? Exactly on the lines which I've spoken.
Right. Right. So he says, look at that video and you'll get the answers. That was India's foreign minister speaking after the incident or at the Brampton temple. Donald Bess, it was a pleasure speaking to you as you spoke about all the issues and particularly on the incident that took place at Brampton. Thanks so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts, and thanks to all our viewers for watching the Mojo Story.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.